system is failing. We're going to have more homelessness, more unemployment, and the government has to print more money. It's a command and control economy where the government tells you everything. I just don't trust our government. And they're going to have to start printing pretty quickly. And the more they print, the less value, purchasing power the dollar has, or the loonie, or the yen, or the peso. People are talking about inflation. I think we're in depression right now, and we're going to be the biggest depression in world history. In the 1970s, that's when the world was changing. The biggest bust in the history of the world is coming up. It's pensions. They trusted the government. They trusted their pension would be there, and it's going to go bust. And that's us. We get crushed.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Bearable Bull here. And I got this aggressively average content for you today. As ladies and gentlemen, today, Gary Gensler appeared before Congress. And this is one of the main things he had to say.
And help protect Americans from the crypto abuses that cost consumers billions.
If they were to live up to the investor protection built into their current laws, it would help investors. But right now, unfortunately, there's significant non-compliance, and it's a field which is rife with fraud, abuse, and misconduct.
Now that you heard what Gary Gensler had to say, you all know how unbelievably impossible it is to comply with laws that don't exist. We know that Gary Gensler has been skirting his obligations as head of the SEC, responding to Congress, and John Deaton put him in his place and called out not just Gary, but Congress. It's time to stop playing nice with Gary Gensler. We want these subpoenas now.
I'm at the point now where I'm frustrated, and I know you are, because enough of the damn letters, man. It is time to issue subpoenas, congressional subpoenas, where they do not get complied with. You get a court order. You send the marshal down there to start bringing people in before the committee. It's rarely done. I don't know why. It's why I hate Democrats and Republicans together equally, because they seem to almost have this unwritten rule. Well, we won't go that far. We'll write letters and we'll pontificate and we'll engage in rhetoric, but we're not going to actually institute some type of change. It is time for that. Gary Gensler is a cancer on the American economy. He is a cancer on innovation. And it's not just him, but he's the head of the SEC. They're leading the fight. It is time to get him out of there by putting pressure and real oversight.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me make something very clear. I have never heard such strong words stated by John Deaton before. A cancer to the United States, a cancer to this system. And the biggest slap of the face to the American people is daring to use the word honorable before having the name Gary Gensler in front of us. There is nothing honorable about Gary, and just look at his little beady eyes. That right there, my friends, is the death stare given by an individual who's using American taxpayer money to annihilate their own wealth. What an abomination to society. And if nothing else, all of you need to know that we're closer than we've ever been before to getting him the hell out of there. Now, ladies and gentlemen, with that being said, I have this post from DAI showing my friends at the Black Swan Capitalists discussing an XRP price set. They stated the price is going to be set, and it's going to have to be set at a high price. And that's also what was told by a few other people. And while I don't necessarily agree, I want to extrapolate on this point after you guys listen to what he has to say.
And I actually asked him to go ask his superiors if he knew anything about XRP. You're not going to believe what he said. We know about the technology. We are not sure what's going to happen with XRP itself because of the lawsuit, but we are still having an emergency plan to adopt the central bank digital currency that Ripple provides. So that is still happening for an emergency. My point, though, is that the acceleration is still happening behind closed doors. None of this would have taken place unless there was an agreement And again, it goes back to the financial system. I believe it's going to be the chain reaction of the banking crisis. It's not an accident. They're going to let this thing, the contagion, spread to where the crisis is big enough to where the Federal Reserve really can't do anything about it, or the FDIC, to where the IMF will have to step in. And if we look at Ripple, they've been working very closely on high-level discussions on financial technology with the IMF, and not just the IMF, some of the other larger institutions too. So I believe they're going to create a situation where it's going to be a big problem where the IMF will have to step in, and they're going to do something with the XRP, but the price is going to be set. It's going to have to be set at a high price, and that's also what I was told by a few other people too.
And here, ladies and gentlemen, this is where I'm going to piss off everybody. I find myself in between the people who believe that the government could intervene when it comes with XRP. There could be some type of price set when it comes with XRP. And the people that are more technology driven, XRPL developer driven, and pure facts driven. You see, both of these halves of the community have a point. I'm a big believer that there are bigger plans in place for XRP than for it to just be a normal digital asset, to be existing in the world without a bigger agenda at play. And from my knowledge about governments, the way they operate, the way they collude, and other things, it tickles my imagination. Especially when considering that I've heard plenty of speculation from well-connected people about this theory. However, when I listen to only the facts we know about the XRP ledger, it makes me think otherwise. Ladies and gentlemen, let me make myself clear. I believe anything is possible in regards to XRP. But after being here for 5 years without reaching new all-time highs, you need to stay grounded in regards to XRP. I have a forever bag of XRP that I'm holding and never selling, just in case a price set scenario exists and could happen. However, you best believe I'm taking quite a bit of profits the next bull run after we pass all-time highs. And this, in my opinion, is the best way to approach XRP, all its theories, all its facts, and everything in between. XRP has underperformed unbelievably over the past 5 years. But now I think it's going to be even bigger than anyone expects. Part of that includes this conversation about ISO 20022 being more than just messaging. And I believe we're continuing to get more information day in and day out that the infrastructure is in place to allow XRP to succeed at any given moment.
ISO 20022 is called and recognized as the standard of the future. And I remember I briefly touched this topic at Hong Kong Blockchain Week. Can you please tell us more about how this standard is applied?
Sure. So ISO 20022 is a standard that's been in development for more than 10 years. And it's not just a messaging standard. That's kind of a misinterpretation of what it is. At its very base, it's actually business flows. So for example, when you're doing a payment, what does that look like? Who are the parties involved? What information do they send to each other, et cetera, et cetera. When you break that down to its components, you end up actually with a very rich kind of data dictionary, which allows you to reuse these components in different ways, like a recipe book. So ISO 20022 absolutely is pervasive in our industry. It's used across payments, securities, transactions. And the reason that it's done so well as a standard is really because of its flexibility and also the fact that it's an open source standard. So anybody can go to ISO20022.org and get the information on the standard out of that. But why it's important from, maybe I'll talk first from a payments perspective and then from a securities perspective, but why it's important from a payments perspective is it allows innovation to grow. So it provides a base about how people interact, so a language, and then on top of it, it allows innovation to grow from there. So I'll give you an example of that. For example, in Australia, there's a real-time payment platform called NPP. That Australian platform actually does person-to-person payment transactions within, let's say, less than 10 seconds. It does this transaction. And that's all based on ISO 20022. The idea is to then, on top of that, build a layer that allows fintech companies to plug into that fast payment utility. And that will allow those fintech companies to be able to offer services to the market. For example, let's say you want to get a mortgage and you have to do all the document checks, you have to do et cetera, and then that results at the end of the day into a payment of your deposit. That could be a fintech company sitting on top of that does document checking and eventually helps to initiate the payment. And what that allows you to do is, because we've agreed on the business standards and how you, for example, initiate payment, it's then more interesting and easy for fintech companies to be able to grow on top of that, because they no longer need to worry about how do they communicate with that real-time payments platform, how do they communicate with the banks. That basis is set and it allows innovation to grow. Another example of that is we do a lot of work with the World Wide Web Consortium around payments and how payments go from a web browser. So we've worked very closely with this group over the years, which includes the like of Google, Apple, et cetera, who are all looking at a common standard on how to do payments.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, if I'm going to make myself very clear with anything, it's going to be this. I believe ISO 20022 is much bigger than we expect, and now that it's officially live, ever since March, anything is possible. You see, in front of you right now is a list of what people call ISO compliant cryptos. But I'm here to let all of you know there is no such thing as ISO compliant cryptos, and that doesn't even make sense. However, what I'm going to call these tokens are the cryptos that are best positioned to benefit from this ISO standard. And that includes XRP, Stellar, Algo, Quant, Hedera, IOTA, and XDC. And in my personal opinion, based on everything we've seen over the years, based on all these timelines and updates set to be ready to happen this November, I think we're close to seeing something special happen. Ladies and gentlemen, we are reaching the amalgamation of speculation and utility. And boy, oh boy, is that a powerful combination for the XRP community. I feel like instead of us having a tribal community of speculators, developers, and everything in between, I think we should work harder to work together. We can all say one thing: the XRP community has all suffered together, and out of the ashes we're coming out of the side reborn. All that's left is price appreciation, and as far as I can tell, it's a foregone conclusion that it's going to happen. Guys, to cap off this video for today, after the speculation of price sets, after the discussion of ISO 20022, I'm going to leave you with David Schwartz hitting you with the powerful 1-2 punch of the technology behind the XRP ledger that is real, is happening, is factual, and will cause the price to rise. XRP has no choice but to go up in value. And David Schwartz has been the chief architect behind driving a lot of that innovation. Please listen to what David has to say. And I think you guys are all going to gain a better understanding of sidechains, the Zahu ledger, and everything that's in store for XRP's future. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Bearable Bull here. Thanks for tuning in. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. Now I'll be back tomorrow with another video.
The way the interoperability is going to look probably for the XRP ledger is probably going to be side chains or sort of adjacent layer ones. So if you think about a feature like any sort of feature that's kind of heavy and that requires like tremendous resources to implement, hooks is a good example of a feature that's like moderately heavy. There's costs associated with adopting it on the main chain. There's benefits too, but there's also costs. And there are going to be features that are good and that people will want, where the costs associated with implementing it on main chain are going to mean that that's not going to be doable. And the other thing that you have is whatever capability the main chain has, however many transactions per second it can handle, there will be people who want more transactions than that for some use case. There'll be some use case that requires some very, very high number of transactions. There may be somebody who wants to issue millions of NFTs. And their use case may be very important to them, and the rest of us may not care about it. It doesn't make sense to put it on main chain. But we don't want to exclude that person from the ecosystem, because there would be no reason. There'd be no reason to say no to someone who wants to build something that adds value to the ecosystem. It just can't go on the main chain. So what that means is that we need to have a robust ecosystem of things like side chains and other layer ones, and we need asset portability. Because one of the most difficult things about launching a sidechain is getting assets that have actual value on it. And so there's a proposal for bridge support on the XRP ledger, which will help to bridge assets to the XRP ledger. And that way, when you develop some new technology, and you want to prove that it works. So let's say you came up with some new idea for the XRP ledger to do, I don't know, crypto collateralized stable coins or something. It doesn't matter. Or maybe some new form of smart contracts or some other DeFi thing that nobody else thought of. And you propose it to the XRP ledger. The burden that you have is convincing people that the resource consumption won't be burdensome, that it won't destabilize the network, that it doesn't have a bug in it that allows funds to be stolen. One of the best ways to prove that is to actually deploy the technology live with real money and show it working. Say, look, here you go. We've got this chain on which it's running, and what's a how is going to do for hooks. You say, look, it's working. I mean, obviously, it could break, but if it works, it's going to, look, it's working. Here it is handling real money. Our validators are stable. Their resource consumption is reasonable. The network is working. This is proof that this is safe to adopt, and that will help to sort of overcome that heavy burden that we don't want to make changes to main chain that could risk destabilizing the network or causing other problems. And so that ecosystem is going to be good for the main chain. It's going to be good for developers who want to build on a side chain. And it gives you immediate horizontal scalability. Anytime you have another layer one or another chain, however many transactions it has, that is at zero cost to mainnet. And so you can immediately have, another chain with 1,000 transactions per second, or it could be a chain that's heavier or lighter, has different features that you want. That's going to enable people to broaden that ecosystem. And it's also going to lower the sort of cost of admission. Right now, you want to get a feature running with real money, you got to get it adopted on mainnet, which is very, very difficult to do. Being able to launch it on a sidechain is just going to streamline that process.